Live from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks, a podcast that will be decided by which old man tires first. It's Sif Pop. Welcome to Sif Pop Weekly, streaming live most Saturday mornings, are available to download later in your podcast feed. Unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get perks.
Patrons get those perks.
Little John.
I'm your host, Aaron Dicer. So random. I'm your host, Aaron Dicer, and the more he podcasts, the more he transcends. It's Andrew Ormsby, ladies and gentlemen.
That is twice you have refused to call me sir. There will not be a third.
Each week we'll chat about movies, TV, and whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. And please welcome our guest this week. Not sure if he's Big John or Little John, but he's one of our Johns. It's Jonathan Watkins.
Hello. I ruined it. I'm sorry.
Nah, I know you're good. It works either way.
Hey, John. Hi.
I'm definitely little. Yeah.
Okay.
Because we're talking about a height, right? So yeah, I'm little.
I don't know. We've got
5'8".
3 regular Johns on this show that come in for that third chair on occasion. So you guys will have to fight it out for your
you can
small,
call
medium, and
me,
large.
You just call me Johnny Watt or whatever it is. I don't remember.
Yeah, that's right. Jay Watts. It's Jay Watts. Eddie Watts.
Eddie Watts. That's right.
Eddie Watts.
JJ Watts.
We are excited. We've got a couple movies to talk about this week that I'm excited to talk about. We've got Halloween Kills, which is the second in what I believe is a planned new Halloween trilogy with Jamie Lee Curtis. Halloween Ends, I think, is the one that's supposed to come out next year.
Yep.
And so we're going to talk about that. We've also got The Last Duel, which finds Ben Affleck and Matt Damon writing together and acting together for, I think, the first time since Good Will Hunting. Yeah, Good Will Hunting doesn't exist. Yeah. So we're going to talk about that as well. And then we're going to do a best ever challenge that's pretty broad. So I think we're going to be able to talk about a lot of good movies we love. But
it's a pretty broad sword.
Yeah.
I mean,
pretty
sorry,
broad sworded
I'm not
topic,
good at
yes.
Wait, I want to know about the Good Will Hunting thing now. Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
What, it not existing?
No, that it doesn't exist. I didn't know.
I was doing a bit, bad bit.
Yeah.
No, it's okay.
We're doing best ever Showdown movies, trying to kind of keep it to movies where the movie is about, the showdown that's coming and then ends with a big showdown. In honor of a Halloween movie that really isn't that. But we'll talk about that a little bit later when we review that movie.
But the Last Duel is.
I thought you were talking about The Last Duel.
I did too.
Yes. Yeah. No, it was attempt to be the best weeks are when we can tie it into both. Yeah. Right. And so I was like, okay, maybe it's kind of both. Well, maybe not. Anyways, we'll do that. And then, of course, we'll do some buried treasure at the end as well. Great to have you guys along. Let's get right into it. Let's chat a little bit. We'll start with The Last Duel. King Charles VI declares that Knight Jean de Cargo, I have no idea, I'm going to mispronounce these names the entire episode, just so you know, settle his dispute with his squire by challenging him to a duel. That is pretty much the entirety of the non-spoilery description of this movie. Stars Matt Damon and Adam Driver as the dueling knights. Ben Affleck, as mentioned, hanging out there as I thought the king, but no, he's not the king. He is just somebody who is high up in that ranking. And then you've got Jodie Comer coming in as Marguerite, who is at the center of this conflict in many ways. What did you guys think of Goodwill Jousting? We will go like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay. Jonathan, why don't you start?
I think I'm on probably the lower end of this, but I'm going to say like it.
Okay, lower end of liked it. Andrew, what about you?
Beyond loved it. Beyond.
Oh,
Great.
Nice. Great. Huge embrace from Andrew. I am teetering right on the loved it, liked it. I think I'm going to end up on the high side of liked it. And yeah, there's not a lot wrong with this movie, but there's one thing that just kind of keeps me from being able to say I love this movie. We'll get into it a little bit more. Obviously, Andrew, you super love this movie apparently. So why don't you kick us off? What are some of the things you really enjoyed about it?
Well, it's good to know, like, when you're in October and you already know which film is going to win Best Picture, so you don't really have to care about, the rest of the year. No.
Wow, big, bold predictions.
I'm not even joking. Like, obviously, I can't predict the future. Dune is, like, the one I'm most excited for, and I hope that it delivers on my excitement. But this is one that I had high hopes for. It's one of those movies where, you have high hopes for it, but then it exceeds it exponentially, and you're like, oh, I didn't know it could be this good. It reminds me a lot of Hero, the Jet Li movie, except in a storytelling way. Like, it's all about perspective is what this movie is really. The main purpose of it is perspective. And what I found interesting, the contrasting elements between this and Hero, is that there is a overwhelming beauty to Hero, just the different aspects and perspectives that the story is told through colors and vibrancy, whereas this one is told, the different perspectives are bleak and grim and cold and just uncomfortable, and the different perspectives and how it deals with I guess, like, one's comfort or the audience's how would you say this? The audience's perception of comfort is so even jarring and divisive between the characters. Like, how one person sees it is so shockingly different from how I'll just say it's told through the three perspectives of Marguerite, John Corduroy, I forgot what you called him, and then Adam Driver.
Cargo. I think I called him Cargo.
Oh, John Cargo's, yeah. John Cargo Shorts. And but it's these three characters,
That was his name, John Cargo Shorts.
It was.
Yeah, John Cargo Shorts.
It is from now on.
Yeah. But it's shocking how like, you could, like, after you watch them, like, they're so different, but you can totally see how that perception and interpretation of actions from one person to another is, so vastly different, but you can totally see how it was perceived that way by each of them. And I don't mean to throw a con in this early, but my only con is I think that the movie should have, really dealt with, you get to choose which of these story arcs you believe to be the truth, kind of like in Hero, where it's ambiguous. I think that this one has a clear, and there's a clear viewpoint that this movie is championing above the other two, which is fine, but I really would have, this is more preferential, I would have really preferred it be more ambiguous than it is delivered to us.
I think it's the point of the movie. I mean, I think the overall point of the movie is what you're talking about, is that championing of, of that one story. Yeah, I don't know what this is officially. It may just be called the Rashomon technique, because I know Rashomon is, kind of the movie that first really popularized the idea of, here's the same story from different perspectives, and it is a great storytelling technique. As far as, like, things I loved about that movie, that's towards the top of the list. I really enjoy the idea of, here's a story, here's another perspective on it. Here's another perspective on it. That works really, really well for me. And I find it very compelling because in many ways, it's almost like you get 3 really tightly told, fairly quickly paced movies, but they're all kind of the same, movie. But, then you get to experience it. So my brain is always active, like, ooh, was that like that when it was from their perspective? Ooh, what's the difference from this perspective? Like my brain is so active during this kind of storytelling.
Yes.
That I really enjoy that because I've always got something to think about, to ponder, to consider. Oh, what's it mean that was, different from his perspective than his perspective? What is the reality there? What does it mean that, her perspective of this is so different than his perspective of this? All that stuff is valuable. And not to mention that the Rashomon, so to speak, is key to, I think, what Ridley is trying to do here, what the story is trying to do here, because it is very much about the idea of how do you know which perspective to believe? How do you choose those things? And the movie, I think, is, again, like you said, making a very clear point to say, this is the perspective we would choose to believe, and here's why. And I think that's kind of, the point of what's going on here, without trying to spoil too much. But I really, really loved that part of the movie. And just the presentation and that kind of storytelling is really fun for me. Jonathan, what are some of the things that you liked?
Like I said, overall, I liked it. I thought it was a good movie. There's definitely more good than bad when all is said and done. I think the performances are quite good. This is one of those things where trailers irritate me especially with social media, because, out of context, Damon and Affleck don't look like they normally do in movies. Matt Damon's doing some kind of like medieval Billy Ray Cyrus thing, and I don't know what I don't know.
The French mullet.
Yeah, the French mullet.
Well, no, it's like it really is like a medieval Billy Ray and a medieval Justin Bieber.
There you go.
Two are doing. Yeah. So,
but then you go watch. It's like trailers are out of context and stuff, and it's like you go watch the movie. Like Affleck, I think steals every scene.
He's incredible. I think he is so incredible in this movie.
He's having so much fun.
He's the levity to the movie. He's
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's just like, hey, come on, guys, let's just go have an orgy. Everything's cool.
Yeah.
Let's just
take off your pants, man.
Take off your pants, man.
You need that guy in your life sometimes, I guess. I don't know. But and Damon's really good. Jodie Comer obviously is, she's having a year. So that's really nice to see. I watched the first season of, is it Killing Eve? Is that right?
Yeah.
And I haven't, for whatever reason, I haven't watched it since. But obviously she was the highlight of that, and it's really nice to see her in like Free Guy, which was a movie I really enjoyed, and now this. It looks great. It's Ridley Scott, so it looks freaking amazing. The duel in question is a lot of fun to watch. It kind of
fun's a strong word.
What do you mean? Well, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Like, it's really well. It's fun to watch how well it's done. It's captivating. Yeah, I guess I'm thinking more from the technique of it. Like
I was just giving you.
No, you're fine. No, you're. Yeah. It's very brutal,
visceral, and brutal.
Yeah, this actually might be the more disturbing film of the two we're talking about this week. I think that.
Sure.
I think if I had any issues with it, Adam Driver's good. With Aaron. I love the storytelling technique. I think it's really interesting, and I like how they did the different takes with everybody, where you've got like Matt Damon might say the same thing, but from the other person's perspective, it comes off very differently. And I like the attention to detail with all that stuff. The Adam Driver character, though, the way he's written, I got a little confused at times as to. I don't know. There's something I can't really put my finger on. There was something about the way they did that character, though, throughout the stories that I didn't find as compelling, and I don't know why. I also, and I like I said, I can't really put my finger on it. It's one of those things I just saw this last night, so maybe it's just something I got to think about. Maybe once I think about it, I'll be okay, because I would not be surprised if this movie goes up for me the next time I watch it. But the other thing, I don't know. they do the stuff with the Jodie Comer character about, you know, whether she's believed or not and stuff like that. Like, that's all very tragic and it's very sad and it's very just like, you know, oh my God. But I think I don't know. I feel like,
man, it's science.
Yeah, I feel like the movie. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's. Oh God, that was an amazing line. The whole and the audience's reaction to that line was just was classic.
Oh man, you should have heard my theater. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was very much a no, you didn't. Kind of moment.
And I don't know that the movie kind of gets away from it pretty quickly, so I was okay with that. But it felt like at one point it was kind of trying to make like this eye-opening thing, and it's like, I don't know, it's not. I'm not shocked that men treated women like crap in the 1300s. Like, that doesn't.
You're getting to it, man. This is my main issue with the movie. Yeah.
And I don't want to take away the seriousness of that, because I'm not saying it's not, but it's just it's just not, I guess it's not as surprising as I feel like the movie wants you to think it is.
Yeah, I have a lot to say on this because it is my main issue coming away that keeps me from being able to put it in the loved category. It is very clear. By the way, Ridley Scott, 83 years old, has two movies coming out this year. Like, I mean, you know,
within weeks of each other.
Like, he's, you know, we talk about Clint as we should. You know, he's got another 10 years on Ridley probably, or close to it. But man, it's so interesting to watch these, you know, directors, continue to do such great work, or to do work, heading into their, you know, later years. But anyhow, it's very clear that he is making a point, a very well-deserved and important point about female agency, about the Me Too movement, about Believe Women, you know, a lot of these things that are very modern. My issue is that it is forced into a context where it doesn't quite live. Like, there's the context of the 1300s is so different than the context of modern time that it's that you can feel the manipulation, right? You can feel kind of how unsubtle this movie can become because it wants to make that point. Again, an important point, a great point. And if you want to view the movie as completely fiction, then that's fine. But we're talking about a quote unquote true story where there are records of these three people and this kind of thing. And in the studying I did afterwards, the real situation has so many unknowns, and there are many things about how it works in the movie that absolutely would not have happened in the 1300s, but they had to happen here because of the point that wanted to be made. And so there is that little interesting thing that happens. And like I said, I still land on the high side of liked it. This isn't something that makes me hate this movie. Like, this isn't a Greatest Showman situation where I'm just like, I can't get past this one thing.
No, that's a good comparison, actually. Yeah, no, it doesn't do that. You're correct.
I still like this movie, really like this movie, but it was that one thing where I was just like, it's definitely, it distracts a little from me, from the authenticity of the context.
Yeah, I will say this, I'm trying not to. It's hard not to. I'm trying to think of what would be a spoiler or not. But I will say, like, specifically with the Matt Damon character, which, as I've thought about this movie over the last 12 hours or whatever, like, his character is the one I keep coming back to. I think in some ways he's the most interesting character as far as the men go. But I really like that they kind of stick to their guns with him. I think where this movie becomes bad is where you actually add sympathy to one of these people, and the movie does a good job of at least not, I don't know, I don't want to spoil anything, but like, does that make sense? What I'm trying to say? Like,
I think the movie is using the two. So there are three main characters here. The two men and Marguerite. And we start with, I don't think this is too spoiler, but we start with Matt Damon's perspective, then Adam Driver's perspective, and then we finish with Marguerite's perspective. Yes, cargo shorts. Yeah, cargo shorts. And apologies for my lack of knowing French names. And I should mention that this is medieval France, not medieval England, and that's
Dude,
important.
It irritated me in the movie, by the way, because some people would say a character name, and I'd be like, "Wait, who are they talking about?" Like, because they were like similar enough to where I'd get like really confused. Sorry.
Well, yeah, you have Jean and Jacques, so those are your two
Jean,
main
Jacques,
people.
and Marguerite. Yes.
Yeah.
So those are your three characters. By the time I got to the end, it was clear to me that the two male characters were very much written to represent the two sides of the toxic masculinity coin, right? One of them is aggressive, dominant, doesn't care. The other one is cares, but cares in a way that is protective, is still doesn't give the female agency because it's always about him, right? Like anything that has to do with her is always about him. It's always, he's not a good enough husband or not and it's like, so neither of them give the female agency, but they do it in opposite ways, right? And so there's this real look at how masculinity can impact the idea of, the female perspective, the female context of the world, which is something, again, we've been hearing a lot about recently, and importantly so. But it became very, very clear that those two characters, that was, to me at least, that was their representation of what we were supposed to be taking after this thing was over, was, they both had things about them that you could go, okay, that makes sense to me. Like, I understand their perspective on this. But at the end of the day, they were also both the perspectives that we were supposed to go, oh, that's flawed. And then the female perspective was the one that was correct, right?
Yeah.
Like that is where the movie is going. Yeah. So yeah.
And
well, because Andrew hates women, so
that's not me saying that the female. I got to backpedal now.
No. I put it out there because I knew how it might sound to some people, but yeah, that is not what you mean for sure. Yeah.
The female perspective is wrong, but here that. I'm going to try and teeter on this without it sounding chauvinistic or, just male toxically. But I do find that there are moments in this movie where the Jodie Comer character made me go, she's reacting to a shocking element of the medieval times, like how women are being treated in medieval times, like a woman from the 21st century would react to. That's what I'm saying.
That's why it's distracting, because it's out of context. In this context, a woman wouldn't be reacting like that, wouldn't be saying those things. In a modern context, it's important to hear those things said and to hear. But when you put it in a 700-year-ago context, it is distracting because it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel authentic to how it would have been handled, how it would have been said, during that time.
They might as well have been playing "We Will Rock You" during the during the duel.
That's a fun movie. I don't care what anybody says. It's not good.
No, that is a fun movie. It's a fun movie.
A fun movie.
That's intentional though too. I mean, like for that movie, that's 100% intentional.
Yeah. I will say for my kind of final thing, I really only have one other point I wanted to make, which is this movie is a lot funnier than I expected. Now, we mentioned a lot of that is Ben Affleck, who is playing the levity here and doing so very, very well. And honestly, all hail the Affleck, because he's giving an incredible performance here. But there is also some humor in the Rashomaning, right? There are some really fun, interesting moments where the audience laughed about how somebody saw something differently than somebody else. And I think of their this is a specific one. I don't think gives too much away, but there's a meeting where they become friends again or whatever, or rekindle their friendship or whatever, and how that is in each of the three stories is different. And our audience was very aware of that difference and laughed quite a bit at that. So there are those kind of moments where in the Rashomaning itself, I just think it's very clear I think this movie does a really good job at allowing you to have those moments of levity, to be able to get through what is honestly, and we haven't said this, a very dark overall plot. The overall story,
insanely dark.
Definitely research your trigger warnings, because that's definitely something that's going on here.
And you see that, I mean, this actually is in the trailer, if you've seen the trailer, and I'm not going to say what it is, but when you learn about the consequences of if he loses that duel, not just for him, but for her, like, you're just like, what? Like, but
Well, hey man, don't mess with science. It's science. So
science.
But
it's crazy though. It's also crazy that Little John was not a reference to this movie. Now that I'm thinking about it,
like a Robin Hood element to it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Not that this is Robin Hood. I don't know why I said that.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. It's actually little. It's Little Jean.
Little Jean.
It's Little Jean.
Little Jean.
Little Jean Vafika.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Man, Ridley Scott, congratulations, man. I would honestly put this up there with like in his best movies he's ever made.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
He's
Obviously
like
we're going to be talking about my favorite Ridley Scott movie ever made later in our best ever challenge, but this is up there. I am excited to watch this movie again. Here I'm going to try and teeter around this with spoilers without giving away. It's in spoiler territory, but I'm not going to like say what's happening.
And I should just mention, because we probably won't be doing a SIF spoil on this. There's
that's
not
what
really
I figured.
enough
There's not really
to talk about. So just dance around it a little bit. Yeah.
There's two viewpoints on the scene. I'll just say the scene. You know what I'm talking about.
I'm with you. Yep.
I actually found the first iteration of that or interpretation of the scene way more horrifying.
Interesting.
Than the second
That's
one.
definitely not the intent.
I know it's not the intent, but I found it more horrifying because of that character's viewpoint. Like, I'm not doing anything wrong. And that is obviously, the other end of that is the victimization of it. And that's terrifying. But that getting put in that mindset of I'm not really doing anything wrong gave me so many more goosebumps. And maybe because it was the first time we saw it, it was way more shocking, the first time around. But no, that first one got me a lot more.
I think it's handled really expertly. Because the movie does a great job at helping you understand his warped perspective. It doesn't say this isn't a warped perspective, but it gives you context for his perspective based on the life he's lived, and it very intentionally echoes a lot of that scene, or pre-echoes a lot of that scene, earlier in the movie to give you a context of where his mind is and those kind of things. I think the movie really handles that well. But yeah, I understand what you mean. I understand what you mean, for sure.
And the fact that I guess you could say the final confession in the duel, like you believe that he believes it. Mm-hmm. It's not like he's not lying to him. Well, he's not lying to himself, as in he doesn't believe his own truth, I guess is the
he's not aware he is lying to himself.
He's not aware he's lying, but that's a great way to say it.
Or he just he's gotten himself to where because after a while, if you tell a lie long enough, I mean, you start to believe it, right?
Sure.
Like you start to believe that's the truth. Yeah. So no, I agree.
Yeah. I cannot
any
wait to watch
thoughts?
this one again.
Yeah. Jonathan, did you have any other thoughts you wanted to?
No,
I mean, move on?
I think I'm really I appreciate everything you said, Aaron, about the issues I was having as well, because I couldn't, for some reason I couldn't get it out that eloquently, so that was nice. But it's a hard subject matter to really teeter on, because once again, like you said, the importance of the way she's treated, obviously that's very important, and but like Andrew was mentioning, it just felt like all of a sudden this 21st century stuff is kind of coming into a movie set in the 1300s. But no, I
understand why they did it that way. There has to be something for the audience to gravitate in. Like, I can put myself in this person's shoes, whereas if you did it in the medieval times, it would seem so foreign to us that it wouldn't be relatable, which I get why they did it. But at the other end, it's a double-edged sword. There's no way to tell this story to where it would actually impact us if you did it one way or the other.
Yeah, and I just but it is a good movie. It's a movie that I'm not going to be shocked at all if it goes up like a Letterboxd star rating or something the next time I watch it. So no, I'm glad I saw it. I might not have seen it if I hadn't been on the show. So I appreciate coming on just to get to see that.
Yeah, it's my number one of the year.
Oh wow!
Wow. So far, yeah. I will. My final thing that I'll say about this movie: thank God I don't live in medieval times.
Right.
Oh, no kidding.
I would
For
not
so
make
many
it.
reasons.
I would not make it.
Nah.
Hey, by the way, you mentioned the thing about your best ever challenge later. So I did not realize A Good Year had a duel in it.
Yes, Goodyear definitely has a
did not.
crazy duel.
Did they fight with like wine bottles?
That is Ridley's best for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about Halloween Kills. The nightmare isn't over as unstoppable killer Michael Myers oh, sorry about that. Escapes from Laurie Strode's trap to continue his ritual bloodbath. Injured and taken to the hospital, Laurie fights through the pain as she inspires residents of Haddonfield, Illinois to rise up against Myers. Taking matters into their own hands, the Strode women and other survivors form a vigilante mob to hunt down Michael and end his reign of terror once and for all. Halloween Kills is the second in the new Halloween trilogy. That should finish up next year, I believe. James Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis back as Laurie Strode. And then a lot of faces and names from other Halloween movies popping up in this one. But then you've also got Judy Greer reprising her role, and then several others as well. Jonathan is definitely the Halloween expert among us today. And by the way, we talked about that in our members-only pre-show. If you're a SIF-Pop member, we spent a good amount of time kind of going over some of our thoughts on the rest of the Halloween franchise and our experiences with it. But what about this one? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? Andrew, you start us off.
Beyond hated it. So I'm at the exact opposite end of the spectrum with the
Wow, it's a love it, hate it kind of week for
I
Andrew.
hated this movie so much.
Jonathan, what about you?
I hope you weren't having me on because you assumed I'd be really positive. No, I hate it. I hated it as well. It's going to be fun to talk about. It's quite terrible.
I absolutely loved this movie. Just kidding. No, we're 3 for 3 here. I hated this as well. Yeah, so this is just a terrible movie, right? Like this is just like, I'm not even talking about like horror movie stuff. Like even beyond like how Andrew and I aren't like horror fans, like I don't understand what this movie is trying to do. I think I understand a little bit of what it thinks it's trying to do, but but Jonathan, since you're the, you have more Halloween knowledge, why don't you kick us off? What are some of your general thoughts on why you hated this?
This is the kind of sequel that just gets under my skin. I don't really get angry at movies not being good and stuff, but it does get under my skin when you have this where they've got like this idea of like, oh, we're going to do a trilogy. Like they've already got the next movie lined up and all that stuff. So in a lot of these cases, like, and I don't have an example off the top of my head, but you have these movies that are not even really movies. They're just like, it's just a bridge. Like that's all it is. Like it's a big bag of nothing. It's continuing stuff from the first one, and it's setting up stuff for the next one, but there's just nothing of substance in this film. If we want to talk about positives first, the couple things I was somewhat intrigued by was I think slasher films just in general are not usually scary, and that's not why I'm watching them. Usually it's more for like the mystery or whatever. But I did think that this probably for a franchise that is so concerned about this mask, like that so badly that if you watch some of those sequels, like the mask is so weird looking, and I don't know, it's a whole thing with the series and the fans and stuff like that. But I will say in this one, I kind of liked the way Michael looked. Like he was actually kind of scary. Like at least he was intimidating. I liked that how they did because of the ending of the last film, which I also did not like the 2018 film, but I liked it a lot more than this. But like his mask is kind of crispy from the fire and everything. And I don't know, he just kind of, and plus the fact that they actually made him the age he should be. So he's this guy, I guess in his 60s, right? That's scary for some reason. And so the character of Michael Myers was maybe the most interesting. I don't know. But anyways, I thought he was kind of scary. The other thing is because this is David Gordon Green, you get a lot of these really, I would guess because it's David Gordon Green and he has these relationships with all these character actors and stuff. You get this really interesting like supporting cast where like these characters that are only in a scene or two, like you've got people like Jim Cummings. And if you haven't seen Wolf of Snow Hollow, by the way, excellent movie. Watch that instead of
Thank you.
Yeah. Jim Cummings, Michael McDonald is in this for he's Little John,
which was
right?
Weird. I was like, am I watching a Mad TV
or a Paul Feig movie? Michael McDonald, and then Lenny Clark plays his partner in this. Robert Longstreet's a great character actor working these days. You just saw him on Midnight Mass. Anthony Michael Hall, who I don't think it's his fault. I think it's the writing. He's terrible in this movie. And that's the other thing about this movie that's so bad is that you, like Aaron mentioned, you get characters from the previous films. In a couple of cases, you get the same actors. And that whole support group idea, there's this thing going on in horror fiction mostly now over the last like 7 or 8 years. And it's kind of this evolution of the slasher genre and stuff like that, where we have these stories focused on the people that survived these like heinous things, these heinous nights, and how they are after it's all said and done, and how they are years later. And then what happens if something comes, if that terror comes back or whatever. I find that really interesting, especially in, like I said, like a lot of these books. Like this year alone, we've got Grady Hendrix wrote the Final Girl Support Group. Stephen Graham Jones wrote a great novel called My Heart is a Chainsaw that deals with stuff like this. I think this movie handles that idea so poorly.
It's terrible.
It's so bad. That scene where Anthony Michael Hall gives that speech at the talent show. What was that?
I need to say this right off the bat.
No, you guys chime in.
No. I just want you can continue, but I just need to say this because I know when I start talking about this movie, I am going to spoil some things. I just want we're not going to do a SIF spoil on this one probably either, probably because we all hate it so much that we want to spoil it for you. Not necessarily there are just some things we need to talk about in order to really, communicate the thing. But that support group thing, I don't understand why you make that a negative part of the movie. Do you understand what I mean by that? Like the movie takes this idea of survivors and turns it into a negative thing. It turns it into some sort of message about mob mentality and mob violence. In that completely, I think you think you're doing something clever, like you're like turning it on its head, but all you're doing is giving the audience nothing to root for. Now we have nothing to root for in this movie. We don't have survivors to root for. We don't have a main character to root for because she's completely sidelined for the entire movie. We don't have a killer. Are we supposed to be rooting for Michael Myers?
Maybe.
And if you're trying to give us empathy for Michael Myers in this movie, if that's the goal of this movie is to give empathy for Michael Myers, then why are you continuing to make him a sociopathic blade machine who just kills everything that just happens to be standing in front of? What are we doing here? What is the point of this movie?
I think, I think, like I said, and like you said, it's a whole ball of nothing. I think that's the problem is that there's just nothing to this. There's nothing of substance to this. And sidelighting Jamie Lee Curtis, I'm glad. I didn't know if that was going to be too spoilery. Maybe it is. I don't really care. That's insane. And I think Halloween 2, the original, we talked about this in the franchise, the original Halloween 2 from 1981, it has the same problem. And I think there's this whole idea of having it the same night, which is kind of interesting. But then because of that, you have to sideline her. And the fact that she even gets up at all, she has had major surgery. Major surgery. I mean, if you just have a kidney stone removed, you can't get up for a couple of days, she's just.
Well, you're not Jamie Lee Curtis. You're not the screen
that's
queen.
True. And she just. Oh, that's where she just stabs herself. And it's just crazy. I will say I did like that they actually did, because one thing about the 2018 that irritated me, or not irritated me, but I didn't get. And when Chris and I wrote the Sin script for it, this was a lot of the stuff we talked about because they chose to ignore everything after the first one. One thing that didn't make sense in the 2018 was they kept calling him a notorious serial killer. He wouldn't really be a serial killer, first off. If anything, he'd be like a mass murderer. But also, and I'm not saying that anybody that murders anybody, I mean, that's terrible. But I'm just saying, like 40 years later,
right?
Somebody that killed like 4 people on Halloween night, I just don't know that person would be like, up in the rankings of like what people would be putting podcasts and, TV shows on and stuff. But then the other thing is, if you don't have the brother sister thing, then it doesn't make a whole lot of sense why he even remembers her, but then why he would target her. Although they do kind of do the thing with, they brought that stupid doctor character in, and then he takes him to the house. And I'm glad they bring that up in this movie, because then you do kind of get that like explanation of, why he was going after her, and it's not about her, and it's just about the town and all that kind of stuff. And that's where you bring in the survivors and stuff. But it's not handled well. And it's like, even though David Gordon Green did this, it's almost like a completely different director did this, because there was a lot of craft and stuff in 2018. Like, it looks good and all that kind of stuff. And it flows well. This has like a terrible structure. It has terrible pacing. The character interactions don't make any sense. It's a mess. It's such a, and oh my God. And can we say that Sam Loomis is in this movie? And it is ridiculous.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got questions about that. I got questions. How did they do that? Because I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of the other the Halloween movies, but I didn't know if those were scenes, because I was actually going to be a pro. That was actually going to be a pro for me, because if that's a deep fake, that is one of the best deep fakes I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, that is all because you've got like, I mean that's Jim Cummings, and I don't know who's playing the young Hawkins or whatever in that scene. So no, that's complete, because the end of Halloween, he gets away.
Yeah,
but because of the 2018 ignores all the other ones, he has to get arrested, or he has to get put into the institution. So no, all that stuff with him being outside and that's like such a bad Donald Pleasance impersonation. Like, that guy's like, Officer Hawkins, where is he? Was just it was about as good as what I just did. And I don't know if that but what I couldn't tell was if that was really like they CG, like if that was like a Peter Cushing thing from like Rogue One, or if that was just somebody in a lot of makeup. I couldn't tell. I really couldn't tell.
It was good.
It might have been a mix.
It was good. I will say, because after the movie, that's the only thing I kept asking myself: how did they get Loomis? Because I couldn't tell if it was a lookalike, deep fake, whatever they did, or a combination of a whole bunch of things.
Yeah,
it looked just like not only that, but it looked like they switched to film, like to old film for the flashbacks and stuff. It looked. So I can appreciate that, because that actually did help a little bit with the telling the different timelines apart and stuff like that. Not that I cared, but that is my one big pro for this movie, is that I think that the CGI for Loomis specifically was like really impressive. Here's my big issue with this movie, and it's a trope. I don't know when this started. Maybe An American Werewolf in London started this, where the humans, like the victims in this movie, just get so stupid and dumb that they end up killing themselves, sort of thing. It's
not just the every single character in this movie is dumb beyond dumb. Like, it is insane, the decisions they are making.
The two smartest people, and I guess I won't give away who one of these people is, because that is kind of a surprise at the beginning. But the two smartest people in this movie are stuck in a hospital room. They're stuck in a hospital room for the entire film. And they're over there giving good explanations and stuff of things, and actually coming up with interesting plans, and nobody's listening to them because they're not in the room with them.
But it's because Evil dies tonight.
Yeah.
That's why.
My eyes, they're going to roll so far back in my head.
This should have been like, this needed to be like a year or two later. Like, this did not need to, I don't know. There's so many things.
Possibility. Let me just ask this question.
Immediate picking up, like, the same night. I actually like that, because because otherwise you're going to be asking yourself, how does Michael get out of the burning house? Which,
true,
that scene immediately leads into the whole I can't believe how helpless these people are, like a possum trying to cross the highway. Like they can't. Like all those firefighters are like the worst. How are you saving anybody's life if you're that incompetent at saving yourself? But everybody in the movie's like that. The worst one was whenever somebody kicks a door and it hits a gun, and the gun does a whole 180 and shoots the person holding the gun. It is so like I have barely come this close to actually leaving a movie theater because I just hated being there. The only thing that really kept me in the seat was the fact that my Thai chicken pizza that I ordered was so good and I had to finish it.
Nice. Shout out for the Thai chicken pizza. Here's the question I want to ask. Is it possible that given the goofiness of the history of this franchise, that this was intentional? That because this movie is so bad,
I don't know.
I cannot help but wonder if it was like, we're going to make a ridiculous, over-the-top, dumb movie. I don't think this movie that's the case.
Well, and I will say that
we took itself seriously.
Yeah, I do too. And I think you're just coming off because you just recently watched 3. This franchise really, I mean, it's not goofy in the way I think it's not goofy intentionally. Yeah. There are things like Resurrection that come off goofy because it was just a lot of bad decisions. But like all of these movies, I think, and like I said, I think that's one of the weaknesses of the franchise is that I think it does take itself too seriously. I wish sometimes that it was more like Friday the 13th, where they were just like, you know what, we're just going to throw Michael in space. Stuff like that. Like that at least has some entertainment value to it. Because trying to create like this is a 12th movie. Just trying to create this like storyline that goes through it's an insane task based off a movie that was just about some guy that came back to his hometown and killed some babysitters. It's crazy. So no, I don't think any of this was intentional. I think they're definitely trying to make like this statement about survivors and things like that, because they did that in the 2018 too. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis.
But what is the statement about survivors? What is this movie telling us about survivors?
Nothing. I think that's the attempt. I think there's definitely an attempt
about, like Anthony Michael Hall, Jamie Lee Curtis, that group.
Because I think this movie is trying to make a point about mob mentality.
And no, this one, yes, but I'm just saying in general though, like in the 2018 version, like that's the whole idea is that she's like, she's off the grid and she's, got this compound and all that kind of stuff. Like, and also this franchise,
Sarah Connor.
Yeah, and this franchise already did a movie about her being a survivor in H20 in Halloween Water, and I thought it was handled, even though that movie's not great. But I thought Halloween H20 is what it's called. So people started calling it H2O, and then like it's Halloween Water.
Is it take place underwater?
No.
No.
I
don't know this franchise, man. I wouldn't put it past it.
This was the 20th year. They made a movie in the 20th year
Halloween 20th
H20.
Year.
Yeah. So Halloween H2O, H20, 20 years later. That? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's crazy. Everybody has called it that since. But anyways, that's not a great movie by any means, but I think it's handled a little better than her character is handled a little better than she is in these, in my opinion. I think I'm a very minor. I don't think many people have that opinion like I do.
But as much as I didn't care for 2018, the point it's making about the Jamie Lee Curtis character and her trauma and her like hunkering down and going to take care of her killer, that makes sense in a moral, ethical, understandable, metaphorical way, right? Like you can draw a straight line motivation. To go, I understand what you're saying about this character. We can use this as a metaphor for trauma. We can use this as a metaphor for, the idea of not letting those who have hurt us, not letting them get away with it or whatever. Like you can draw that direct line. This movie takes the entirety of the survivors of Michael Myers. And yes, if you didn't believe it before, believe it now. I'm spoiling this movie. But this movie takes the entirety of the survivors of Michael Myers, and instead of using it as a metaphor for grief, for how to be a survivor, how to persevere, it turns them into an evil mob and dispatches them one by one. What is this? What is it doing? What is it saying about it? It's such a weird, dumb thing to do. And I mean, it makes them stupid. It makes them dumb. It gives them dumb decisions. Like
the cops are terrible, and like the cops were actually, I would say, kind of smart in the 2018. At least they were. I mean, they were trying to give them. They were just doing what they were just being cops, right? They were just trying to keep all this contained. But in this one, like, the sheriff doesn't even try to stop them, really. I mean, he's just like, we don't need to do that. And then everybody's like, no, we're doing that. And then he just kind of steps aside. And then, like, Judy Greer lets her daughter go with them. Like, well, she doesn't really let her, but doesn't really go after her.
The entirety of this mob somehow confuses a short, bulgy man with Michael Myers. What? What are you trying to do here? Like,
the juxtaposition there's a way to do that where it works, but the juxtaposition of that it didn't make any sense. It's and oh man, I don't remember what I was gonna say. So I totally agree with you on that.
I just don't understand what it's trying to say. Like, at least in 2018, I could draw a straight line, from that idea of trauma and metaphor. And in this movie, I'm just like, none of this makes sense.
No, I think what it's trying to say is that mob mentality is bad. So
why do you put your most empathetic characters in the middle
does.
Of it?
Yeah, no, but it does. Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. You're asking what it's trying to say and what it does well. These are two different things. I think that's what it's trying to say.
You're
I think it's very unsuccessful at saying that. And then the other thing that really irritated me. Well, first of all, let's go back to this. Yeah, you're talking about them getting dispatched because there's always been. I've heard this story. Some of the actors that played the final girls in the Friday the 13th franchise, like at these conventions and stuff, like they'll all come and they'll sign autographs and stuff. And then so typically they'll get together and have dinner or whatever and talk. And so there's Amy Steele, who's in Friday the 13th Part 2. I heard her on a podcast talking about how they've talked in the past about it'd be really cool if they did a Friday the 13th movie where it was like all the final girls get together and like go after Jason. But then they said the problem with that though is that you would have to kill some of them. And see, and that is problematic because I feel like, and they do this. I mean, like, Nightmare on Elm Street killed Nancy eventually, and Friday the 13th killed Alice eventually. Spoilers for like 35-year-old movies. Sorry. Even though we're spoiling one that, came out yesterday. But I feel like if you survive the movie, like you get to survive, like you get to live after that point, right? Like, and it's like I don't want to watch these people get killed.
That's what
later.
I'm saying.
It's not that this is supposed to be fun but it's like horror always has to cover that fine line of it just feels almost like mean-spirited in a way.
It's almost like the opposite of, I'm just going to use a recent example. Steve Trevoring, right? Like where Wonder Woman, where there's a sacrifice that is undone, right? In the Wonder Woman series. In this case, it's the opposite, where there is a survival that's undone, and it almost just like. And I'm not even a huge fan of these movies, but it's just like, oh, so now how do I feel about those original movies where these people survived? It meant nothing,
Yeah, exactly. Like, well, that's great, but you're going to die in 40 years. Right,
yeah.
That's awful. I also really hated the end. And I thought I think part of the problem with the end, though, is that you don't care about anything leading up to it. Maybe if I cared about some stuff that happened before, maybe I'd like it better. But I don't like, I know this franchise really doesn't go all that supernatural for the most part. Like, there is this whole idea, you got the whole like Loomis thing about, the darkest eyes, the devil's eyes, or the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes, and that he's pure evil. He's not a man. But like, they never actually say that. Like, they actually they actually go out of their way to try to come up with ways that he's still alive. He's been in a coma, or, this homeless man's been taking care of him for a year, and weird stuff. I mean, and that's not a joke. Like, that happens in one of the movies. So they try to do stuff like that. But then in this one, you have this bit at the end, which comes out of nowhere, where Laurie all of a sudden has this theory about that every time he kills someone, he gains power.
Yes.
What?
This is my big question.
What?
This is my big question. And either way, the answer is, I have a question, and there's one of two answers. And it's funny, either way, I hate it. I hate it.
It doesn't matter which answer. I still hate it.
I still hate it. Is Michael human?
I mean, everything leads you to believe he's supposed to be, but I mean, there is this whole idea that like, but he's controlled by that. Yeah, I know. I agree. That's why the first movie is really the only one that completely works, because after that, you're just like, this is getting silly. Like, I mean, maybe the second one, maybe he survives 5 gunshots. I don't know. I doubt it, but I don't know. Yeah, it's almost like you have to just make him a monster. Like eventually in the Friday the 13th movies, they just made Jason a supernatural creature. They were just like, you're Frankenstein's monster. Just go to town. And I feel like they almost had to do that, but they just refused to do it. But then it makes it more insane every time you see this. And you're just like, how is this guy not dead? I mean, there's even a scene where, he got burnt and stuff. I mean, all kinds of stuff. But like, even in this movie, like there's a scene where, Laurie's granddaughter is just like stabbing him relentlessly, and he's just like kind of standing there like, so he can't be right, but the movie wants him to be, and then it wants to have this weird thing about like every time he kills someone, he like gains more power, and it just
I hated that Jamie Lee Curtis speech so much. Or was it her?
I think it was her. Or the surprise character, but I think it was her. But yeah, and that's another thing. She's so grounded. Like, I mean, she's obviously heavy on medication and stuff like that because she's been dealing with all this trauma. But she seems pretty sensible. Like, she was the one that knew this was going to happen and all that kind of, and then you have this really ridiculous moment where she's just like, yeah, no, she like becomes Sam Loomis almost, and maybe that's intentional. Maybe
there's so many. Okay, so if Michael is human, there are so many moments in this movie where somebody gets the upper hand on Michael and they are in prime gonna kill him, like totally finish him off in the franchise, but they quit, and then they're like, oh, let's go get up close and take a look. I'm like, no.
It's like teams that play Alabama every week. They just quit.
Yeah, can't finish them off.
Or I like that.
Or the tide turns with no explanation.
Tide.
Yeah, that was I thought you might have the Crimson Tide. Actually,
you're getting a.
So or they're in this moment where it's obvious that they've got him, and then we cut to another scene and we cut back and they don't got him, and it's like, what?
How surprise! I'm fine.
How long does it take to? I don't fire guns, but how long does it take to pull a trigger? Like, I mean, how long? I mean, you've already got the gun ready to go. Yeah. Like, you just pull the trigger.
Lay it on the ground, got the gun to his temple. Time for a monologue.
I will say, I did like, also speaking of the cast, though, I forgot to say this. I will say, I did like that Judy Greer actually got used a little more in this one because but that's just more of I like Judy Greer. So,
yeah, but she's dumb. Just like every other character in the movie.
Yeah, well, yeah, she probably is. Yeah, I guess so.
I'll make this it. I don't need to say much more, but this movie also introduces new victims, right? Like the Lonnie Elam kid at the beginning. That's a brand new thing, right? Like,
and that's not the same. I mean, Lonnie was in the movie. He was actually like, he bullied Tommy in the movie, and there's this moment in Halloween for people that are fans of the movie that always quote where Lonnie and a couple other kids where they mentioned that Lonnie was the only one to go in the Myers house.
Right. Yeah.
That scene is actually in the original because Donald Pleasance is like in the bushes and he's like, Lonnie, get your ass away from there.
Oh, okay. Anyways, but I remember this will be my last thing. There's so much stupidity in this movie, but I'm just he's there. So much. He's there with a map on a car, and he goes, "He's here," and then he goes here, and then he's drawing a straight line to his house, and I'm like, how is nobody know this without a map? How is the first thing you don't do is go to his house?
And people live there. People that could be in danger.
Right.
Live there. And you're just like, why would
they not
send a cop there?
Maybe stake out the house, the Myers house.
Okay, here's another thing.
Come on.
This is getting into the nitty-gritty, but I have to say this because I hated it more than anything else in the movie. I've worked in a hospital before. Morgues don't have giant viewing windows.
Oh, I was wondering about that. That was weird too.
I have worked in hospitals where one of my jobs for years was to take, the recently deceased down to the morgue. There are layers upon layers of doors and like giant concrete
to make sure nobody just accidentally sees dead people. Yeah.
Yes.
But not here. Here it's like the birthing viewing room. Here it's like,
Yeah,
that's
that one woman like sees her kid. That's how she discovers her kid's dead.
Right. Yeah.
And then you've got the granddaughter, who was that? That's it's Andy Matichak or whatever. But you've got her just sitting there, just staring at her friends that are dead, and like nobody's like going, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't be doing that." Like maybe, and her mom like has a conversation with her in front of that window. Like it's crazy.
What a great movie, guys. What a great, well done to all involved.
Aaron, I'm mad at you for making me watch this movie.
You should be. You definitely should
be. Well, I mean, it's and you're going to hate it even more because it's going to destroy, it's going to make so much more money than Last Duel this weekend, which is just unfortunate.
If you want to see Halloween Kills, it is not only in theaters, it is also on Peacock. Yeah, then shame on you.
Did you guys watch it on Peacock, or did you go?
I actually watched it on Peacock.
I didn't know it was on Peacock. I went to the actual movie theaters to see it.
I did too. My friend Dave, who I see a lot of movies with, he doesn't have Peacock, and he really wanted to see it in the theater, so I actually went.
More mad.
Yeah,
I paid.
Yeah, they did a day and date.
$13 to go and see it. But I got that fried chicken pizza. So
that's cool. You paid $13 though for a Halloween movie. That's kind of fun.
Yeah. 13. All right, before we move into the best ever challenge, thank you to our Sif Pop members. You make this kind of stuff happen, and you make the opportunity for us to absolutely despise a movie possible, and we thank you for that. In all honesty, it is incredible to see you guys hanging out at the Sif Pop Club over at Patreon, patreon.com/SifPop. If you want to check it out, as mentioned, we kind of went over the Halloween franchise during the members only pre-show this week. So if you want to check that out, also you get ad-free versions of the podcasts at different levels and lots of other fun perks. So you can check that out again at patreon.com/SiftPop. All right, let's move into the best ever challenge. We're going to do best ever showdown movies. Again, the intent here is that the movie is about a showdown between two characters that happens towards the end of the movie. But it's pretty broad, and you can kind of stretch some things into here. And I suspect we all did. Let's go number 5 to number 1. Andrew, why don't you start us this week? What's your number 5?
I am going to go with a movie starring Tom Hardy called Warrior.
Oh, yes. Good choice.
Nice.
This movie is so good. It's shocking how good this movie is, because it does such a great job of, laying a foundation of why there's going to be the inevitability that these two brothers are going to fight in this tournament, and normally, that could be good enough on its own, but the actual depth that the movie goes into to tell that story with the Nick Nolte father character, who's killing it. This is easily Nick Nolte's best performance ever.
Oh my God. I forgot Nick Nolte was in this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, oh man. Wow. It's the first thing I think of because it's so shockingly heartbreaking. That scene where he's like screaming about Moby Dick in his hotel room, it's, oh man, I cry every single time I see it. But it's Joel Edgerton who's the other brother, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you got Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton. The fighting in this movie is decent. It's good. It's not like realistic to any stretch of the imagination, but there are moments in this movie that go beyond just the brother element, like the Joel Edgerton fight with the Russian guy Koba, and he has what's his name? Who was his trainer? He was in Civil War. He was in
Frank Grillo.
Yeah. Whenever he gives him that, if you don't knock him out, you don't have a home speech. Like, you just get chills. There are so many moments like that in this movie, and that I love it so much. I really do. If you haven't seen Warrior, not The Warriors, but Warrior, highly, highly, highly recommend it. One of the best fighting movies ever made. Easily.
Did you watch the series that was based on it? I think wasn't there a TV show a couple years ago? Am I wrong about that?
I didn't even know that.
About like a expanded version of this movie?
Yeah. I think I'm right. I could be thinking of something else.
Is
I believe
Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton in it?
No, I don't think so. I've never seen it. I just remember it came out, and I remember it got some I think it got high marks. Like people were talking about it was pretty good, but it might have been one of those things too where it might have just been like a direct TV channel or something. It wasn't. I don't remember who aired it, or maybe it was like Cinemax or something. But
I'm finding a Warrior TV show in the works.
Maybe that's it. Then maybe I'm thinking of something else, and maybe I've just heard that it's coming out. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, looks like it's in the works.
Well, sorry about that.
Gavin O'Connor has confirmed.
Oh, okay.
The Warrior TV show is happening and reveals the first plot and character details. This article is from like a month ago. So yeah, it's in the works.
So I guess you haven't seen the series.
Also, I'll throw out, I love Gavin O'Connor movies. I think the guy makes amazing movies.
What an interesting career. What an interesting career, because after Miracle kind of goes, he does this, and then he kind of goes away and does The Accountant, right? Like he directed The Accountant.
Yeah.
Oh man, I like The Accountant.
I
quite a bit.
Do too.
It grows on you.
So yeah, and then after that, he did The Way Back, which I don't know if you guys saw The Way Back with Affleck,
I like
the basketball movie, but I thought that was good too. So he's got 3 good to great sports movies, which is really interesting to me.
I watched The Way Back 2 weeks ago for the first time.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It was meh for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoyed it.
That's a conversation for another day.
All right, we'll move on to my number 5.
Hey, can I ask you a question really quick?
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
sorry. What is it? The Warrior was not on my list, or the Warrior. Sorry, I don't know why I said that.
Oh,
no, you're good.
Sure.
That's a good song. Warrior is not on my list, but what is it you say if it's on your list higher than the person that says it?
Oh, Trump. Yeah,
Trump. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
You guys are sticking with Trump. Okay, cool.
Yeah. We're it's a little safer for the time being.
We're past.
I still think someday, I don't know how long it will take, but someday people will think that's the origin of that word. Like like the way the human brain works or whatever. It's just a wild thing.
There's an actual term for that. I forget the name of it, but it has something to do with frisbee. Where it's actually called a discus, but everybody just calls it a frisbee now because the pop culture nomenclature just changed the name to it.
Band-Aid, Q-tip. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay,
go.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so who I was gonna ask who's gonna go next. So
yeah, I'll go next. Next. My number 5 is a Hitchcock movie, Shadow of a Doubt. Is what I have at number 5.
Think about this. This is my favorite Hitchcock film. Go on.
I think it qualifies. I think this is
absolutely.
It is definitely a showdown movie between the Charlies, right? It's Charlie versus Charlie, and it comes to a head at the end. And this is such a great movie, and it is one of those Hitchcock movies that I think is underseen for whatever reason, maybe because it's a little older, but it is high quality stuff. So if you haven't checked out Shadow of a Doubt, you've got Teresa Wright as young Charlie, and you've got Joseph Cotton as Uncle Charlie, and both doing incredible stuff. Some of my favorite stuff in this is just the family conversations around the dinner table, and this is a really great movie, front to back. So
this is my favorite Hitchcock. I kind of hate that it is sometimes though, because everybody's always like, that's Hitchcock's favorite of his movies, right? I'm like, yeah, I know. That's not why. And to be fair, I mean, my top probably 7 Hitchcocks could replace each other on a daily basis if I really thought about it. But no, I absolutely love this movie. I was trying to think out of the box a little bit too. But this one didn't come to my mind. But no, this totally works. Absolutely. Yeah. There's a great kind of weird. It's not really a remake, but it's kind of a remake called Stoker. That came out maybe 10 years ago or something. That's pretty interesting. But Shadow of a Doubt's amazing.
Awesome. What's your number 5, Jonathan?
My number 5 is definitely it's kind of more in the line of Warrior, but it's a little older. It's Enter the Dragon.
That's such a good movie.
Oh my God. I mean, much like his son, I mean, we lost Bruce Lee just way too young. I'm always, because you watch this movie and you just think about what the 80s would have been like with Bruce Lee. The 80s action scene, if you had Bruce Lee mixed in there too, like, the kind of stuff he would be doing, like, but anyways, no, I love this movie. And it's not really, I mean, it is kind of a tournament movie, which is always kind of like Warrior, which is always, for whatever reason, a little appealing to me. I find that, like, going through the stages and all that. But the thing I really like about this, because the thing I thought about this when I was trying to figure out my movies, was you need a really, really good villain, I think, to make these work. And I think that I'm going to butcher this name, but I'm going to go with Qian Shi, plays Han, who is just terrifying villain. Yeah, and he's got the claw hand, which has been done to death in parodies and other and not parodies, where people just try to come up with these villains. He's almost like a Bond villain or something. I mean, this is kind of like Bruce Lee in a Bond movie.
This is as close to like the Eastern, even though it's an American film, it's an Eastern Bond, really.
Yeah, because he's got because Han's got like this. He's got like this island,
island.
He's got all these fighters, and and they're in each one of them. Like Jim Kelly plays one of the fighters in this, which is interesting. And so it's just a really, really exciting, great action movie. Talk about a director that had a weird career. Robert Klaus, this might be his only good movie, but man, that guy has directed some odd stuff. But you watch this and you're just kind of like, how did he even make this? But I think a lot of it has to do with Bruce. And this is definitely my favorite Bruce Lee movie. I think it's his best movie.
Easy.
Yeah. And I just love it. And if it's one of those you just never gone back and watched, or you felt like you've seen it just because you've seen a lot of other, I highly, highly recommend it. Nice. So good.
All right,
we wouldn't have a Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter or any of those if it wasn't for Enter the Dragon. So
I mean, those are examples of stuff maybe we shouldn't have, but that's okay.
Hey,
I'm kidding. But even stuff like Bloodsport and stuff. I mean, there's so many of these types of movies. Best of the best. Whatever you want to go to.
Yeah.
Yes, but does it have a song that's like "Enter the Dragon"?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
This is 1973. They weren't.
All right, let's get into our number fours. Kick us off.
So this is where I have The Lion King.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah. We got the final showdown between Simba and Scar. That's kind of what the movie, the Hamlet story, is building up to. Easily my favorite Disney drawn. I don't know how you categorize it, but drawn animation as opposed to like a hand drawn. Easily my favorite hand drawn Disney movie ever. The music is amazing. The visuals to this day are still beautiful. Like the stampede in the gorge, is just so in like anxiety and like adrenaline inducing. And what can I say about Jeremy Irons that hasn't been said before? Scar might be one of the best villains ever portrayed on the screen.
I agree.
Yeah. It's a combination of the Shakespearean element, which I'll admit I don't like Shakespeare, but whenever you can and it's the actual like articulation and like the poetic version of speaking that I'm not a fan of. Whenever you have like a modernization of that storytelling, like in this, that's when it really hits me. That's when the emotions really hit me. Like the "Long live the king," line. It's so good. So you have just too many good people in this movie for it not to be like one of the greatest movies ever made. Jeremy Irons, one of the best villains ever.
Oh, man, Be Prepared is one of my favorite villain
so good.
ever in a movie.
In this movie. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it might be the best. It might be the best like Disney soundtrack. I'm trying to think. Like I really like Moana. Like Moana is the most recent one that just blew me away.
It's
I know a lot of people like Frozen.
This and Aladdin. For me, it's between this and Aladdin. For the best soundtrack.
That's and like what a year, 2 years apart, I guess. 92 and 94.
This was 94, I think.
Yeah, Aladdin was 92. So
okay, yeah. Here we go. That's my number 4.
My number 4 might get trumped. In fact, I think it will, unless it wasn't considered a Showdown movie. I have Whiplash at number 4.
I was really close to putting it on my list, but I didn't know.
Yeah. I think this qualifies as a Showdown movie between the two of them, especially the way it ends. Is very much a big battle of drumming, and we've talked much about this movie in many different BECs. So no need to go into a lot other than to say, wow, what a movie.
I will say I agree with you on this, that it is a Showdown movie. I don't like this movie. But I'll tell you why I don't like. Yeah, Andrew's like leaving.
Andrew's about to walk out.
This movie makes me really, really uncomfortable. It's supposed to. It's supposed to. But it's more of a trigger thing. Like I can't sit there for an hour and a half and watch a grown man yell at a kid and abuse a kid that way. It's just something personally. Like I know there's more to it than that, but like that's all I see when I watch this movie.
Yeah.
I wish I could enjoy
my bread and butter. I watched that.
I wish I could enjoy it on the level. I wish I could get more out of it than that, because our friend Barrett at CinemaSins, and this is like one of his all-time favorite movies. He's got like a poster up on his in his office, and he's probably talked about it when he's been on here. But I can't get there because it's just so like, it's just, oh God, I get chills, and it makes me like just want to take a shower, and I don't know.
No, I get that.
But I think it's a great entry. I'm glad one of you put it on here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what a way to announce yourself to the world, with if this is your coming out movie. I will say, for me, I believe I've said this before. I think this is technically the best movie ever made. It's not my favorite movie ever. It's my number 3 movie on my greatest of all time list. If I would have considered it a best ever Showdown movie, it would have easily been my number 1. But
yeah. Jonathan, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is A Few Good Men. This is one of my all-time favorite movies. I just love this movie, but I think the Tom Cruise versus Jack Nicholson thing, I mean, I don't know if like from the get-go, like this is the goal,
right?
But I feel like there's enough there. Like once he meets with him and realizes that he's involved, I do feel like it is kind of a battle of how are we going to get him. I just don't think you get the battle from Nicholson's side, because I don't think Nicholson cares about Daniel Kaffee. But I still just, that final 15 minutes or whatever, 20 minutes, I mean, just that showdown leading up where he's explaining what he's going to do, which always irritates me that Roger Ebert says that scene ruins the movie. God, that makes me so mad when I read that review. But I love that scene where he's talking to Demi Moore and Kevin Pollak, and he's explaining exactly how he's going to get him to admit what he did, and then you get to see it played out, and it's exciting cinema. I know like Tom Cruise has probably taken a hit from a lot of people's views over the last like 15 years or whatever, and I don't know if this movie, although it's on TV a lot, but I don't know if this movie is quite as loved as it used to be. Maybe it is, I don't know. I just don't feel like people talk about it as much, but it's definitely one of those movies in my teen years that was like, this is why I love movies. And and I even if the movie doesn't necessarily follow the true, like, I don't know. I had a hard time figuring out if it fit in here or not, but I thought there was enough. I thought there was enough to get it in here. Yeah. So
I'll put him on the stand.
Oh my God. And Kevin Bacon's sweater game in this movie is brilliant.
It's I just recently watched this movie a couple months ago. By the way, I think Rob Reiner's streak of movies
it's insane.
that this encompasses is like the best, like amazing streak of movies in anybody's career ever.
I think it ends here though, because I think North was the movie he followed this up with.
Yeah. I've had this conversation, by the way. It's one of my favorite. I actually call it the Hitch List. Directors that have made 5 great movies in a row.
But he did do. But if you take North out of the mix, so he did do American President. Like, I think, and that's a really good movie. But yeah, what is it? It's like it starts with, is it Spinal Tap?
Yeah, this
Through
is
A Few Good Men, because you've got like Princess Bride and Misery and Stand By Me. I mean, it's nuts.
Yeah,
it's the only one. I just
great.
mentioned that because the only one to compare is the Hitchcock, North by Northwest, Vertigo, Psycho. Like that 5-run streak is pretty incredible as well.
Christopher Nolan too.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And
But
yeah,
it's one of those movies. What I was going to say is that after this rewatching, I'm surprised how much I never really appreciated how good Demi Moore is in this movie. Like whenever I watched this movie originally, you know, I always go back to thinking, you know, Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson and, you know, and just Rob Reiner in general. But this last time I really noticed and really appreciated just how good she is in this movie.
Yeah, she's great. She's great. She's one of those, I think she's gotten kind of lost in the conversation because she kind of became more of a, you know, divorcing Bruce Willis and then, you know, married Ashton Kutcher. And I think that kind of became more of what she was known for. And she had some unfortunate, you know, health issues and stuff, mental issues and stuff that, you know, got kind of ridiculously, you know, memed and whatnot. It was dumb, but no, she's great. She's got a lot of good stuff back in that day where she was a powerhouse. But yeah, I just that final scene, there's so many things you get something different out of it every time. Like I love, like Kevin Bacon, like I love his reaction after, Nicholson says the line, or, you're right. I did.
Yeah.
And Kevin, and he's just like, Cappy has to be like, Jack, like, come on, man. Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
It's so good. It's chilling.
Kevin Bacon does a lot of those roles. I remember we're watching Frost Nixon whenever he was the,
love that movie.
Yeah. It's a great movie. But whenever he's Nixon's, I guess, PR rep for the interviews, and whenever Nixon says whenever president does something it's not illegal, it just cuts to Kevin Bacon. He's like, oh crap, like he knows.
yeah. All right, let's head into our number threes.
All right,
what do you got, Andrew?
This might surprise people that I have this lower than what a lot of people would. This is where I have Rocky. Is it going to get trumped by anybody? No.
Well,
okay.
No, not really. Go on.
Okay.
I'll explain that in a couple picks.
Sure. It's you have a different Rocky higher, maybe.
Yeah.
I get that. Yeah, I get that. Rocky 2 is one of those, if that's the one you're thinking of, then. But anyway, or Ivan Drago. But the crazy thing about Rocky is I looked this up the other day. It's a 2-hour movie with 8.5 minutes of boxing. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like that's all the boxing. The rest of it is character development, character motivation, setting up, the environment that Philadelphia just becomes this character, and the relationships that are built to where the boxing element of this movie is not only secondary, but it might even be tertiary and like how important it is. Because even after the fight, you have all these people running up to Rocky who, trying to get getting him for an interview because he went the distance and stuff. But all he's like, Adrian, because that is the most important part of this movie. It's easily one of my favorite fight movies ever made. It's just one of my favorite movies ever made. I don't know if I've ever told you, I've done the Rocky run in Philadelphia where you actually do the whole, it's horrible. It's truly horrible.
Too much.
Yeah. I did the Rocky run /walk/crawl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My number 3 is in, by the way, all my top 5 are in like my top 40 of all time.
Same.
But,
they're all Pixar. I'm sorry.
Yes, they're all Pixar, especially this one. My number 3 is one I don't know that I'm on an island of thinking it's a great movie. I think people think it's a great movie, but I don't often hear it in like best of lists and that kind of thing. But I have The Revenant at number 3.
Very interesting. Yeah, that totally works.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely a showdown movie, and it ends with an incredible showdown. I think this movie, on a movie making level, is one of the best movies ever made. And then beyond that, I think the performances are great. I think, what's happening here. The fact that he chose to shoot in only natural light for this movie blows my mind.
Oh, yeah. He's like, they only had like 30 minutes to shoot each day.
Was this Inarritu? I don't know how to say it. Was that who directed this?
Yeah.
Inarritu.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this movie. And again, it's not an easy movie to watch. There's definitely some traumatic things that happen in the movie. So I always tell people that, but then after that, I'm just like, but man, as far as compelling experiences go, the DiCaprio Hardy stuff in here is just absolutely astonishing. So yeah.
For me, this movie is actually like the whole revenge element is kind of overshadowed by a single scene, and that's the bear scene. Like, I think that's the scene everybody comes back to, when in reality, it's the inciting incident, but it's so visceral and shocking that it's the only thing that I really think about when this movie is brought up.
Sure. I
totally agree. This movie is 100% a revenge film, like a Showdown movie, and it's just a brilliant movie in general. So, I
love it. Jonathan, what do you got at number 3?
My number 3 is a movie that kind of I think it gets overshadowed because it was released in 1995, the same year as Braveheart. So I think Braveheart has really overshadowed this movie, but I think it's outstanding, and that's Rob Roy. I almost think Rob Roy might even be, I might even like Rob Roy better than I do Braveheart. In fact, I know I do. I don't know if I think it's better, but it's definitely more enjoyable for me. Tim Roth.
It's so good.
It's Liam Neeson and Tim Roth. Yeah, Tim Roth is maybe my all-time favorite villain in this. His villain in this movie might be my all-time favorite villain in a movie. I mean, he's up there. Like, he's up there in that, like, that Vader, Khan, whatever you want to throw out there.
It's the air of superiority that he carries with him.
Oh my god,
that is just so inciting and rage-inducing.
Yeah, he's like he's kind of like if Adam Driver's character in The Last Duel was just full on villain. I think somebody is mowing my yard right now. Sorry about that.
You can't even hear it.
Good. Yeah. But he's just, it's just amazing. And then all this builds up. So he goes, and if people haven't seen this one, Liam Neeson plays Rob Roy. I mean, it is based on an actual person, but he plays Rob Roy, and Tim Roth's character comes over. It basically like kind of just destroys his house and land and stuff, and assaults his wife, and just makes his life hell. And so the rest of the movie is basically like Rob Roy is, destined to fight Cunningham, and the sword fight that happens
is one of the best.
Is the best sword fight ever in a movie. It is so intense. It is just insane. Like, they have these big broadswords. Like, it's not like the Three Musketeers with the whisk. Well, I don't know why I'm doing a visual thing on a podcast. Does have
like a little rapier, but Rob Roy.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I don't know my weapons well, but
I know what you're saying. Yeah,
it's just shot. Yeah, and they both it's just so brutal, and it's amazing. It's just amazing. It's an amazing movie. Can't recommend it enough.
When Liam Neeson just grabs the blade.
Yes. Oh god, have you seen this, Aaron?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I have. Yeah, not in a long time. Not probably since it came out.
Yeah.
So
Jessica Lange is also excellent in this movie.
Yeah.
This is around
William
kind of the
Hurt
time.
is great in this too.
Oh yeah. It's so good.
There's a whenever it comes to like a movie, like a sword fighting scenes, this one and The Duelist, I don't know if anybody has that on their list for today, but those two movies are brought up as like the two most realistic sword fighting scenes.
Yeah, realistic is good
in cinematic history. So
I need to watch The Duelist. That's Ridley Scott's first film, right? And that's one I've never seen. I don't think, unless sometimes I watch these movies from like 70s and 80s. I'm like, oh no, I have totally seen this.
Yeah,
but I don't think
The Duelist is great. I really like The Duelist.
Okay, I'll check that out.
Yeah.
All right, on to our number 2s. Andrew, what do you got at number 2? We don't have a repeat yet. This is fun. I like this. Yeah. What do you got at number 2?
This one there's a high probability somebody has this on their list. But this is my Ridley Scott movie that I was talking about, and it's Gladiator.
Nice. I didn't have that on my list. No.
Oh, yeah.
I have it in my honorable mentions, but yeah.
Interesting.
I haven't watched it in a long time, so but I can totally see this being on the list.
Yeah. The final encounter between Commodus and Maximus is just stellar. Ridley Scott does, and I think that this is also brought up well in The Duelist, is he has a way of kind of the same thing that Stephen King does in his movies, where villains in some of Ridley Scott movies are so just overtly, unquestionably evil that some people might say, well, there's not a lot of layers to this character. Like they're not making me, there's no sympathy level for this character. Like in for this movie, Commodus is just so insanely evil that Joaquin Phoenix just gives an incredibly stellar performance. But the story of Maximus, the fall from grace, the rising from the ashes, it's very biblical in a way, and it's just gorgeous too. That's another thing. Ridley Scott can make some of the most gorgeous, beautiful, like just cinematic spectacles that you've ever seen. Yeah, it's one of the greatest movies of all time.
Yeah, good choice. Good choice.
I love it. I just, like I said, it's probably been 15 years since I've seen it, but no, I love this movie. This movie's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My number two is probably my biggest stretch to fit the category. I do think it works. In my mind, it definitely does.
Revenge of the Nerds.
Revenge of the Nerds is my number two. The Truman Show is what I have at number two. I really do see this as a Truman versus Christof movie, and it really does result in a showdown at the end. Who's going to persevere, and Truman does. So yeah, I've talked about this movie a lot. Love it, and so prescient. That's something you have to talk about when you talk about this movie, is just how much it really kind of played into something that was going to become the norm as far as all of our lives are almost, can be on display 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So Truman Show. That's my. I know this is a pointless thing because it is what it is. There's only 5 nominations every year. People get missed, but Jim Carrey not getting nominated for this is a crime. And I think Ed Harris got nominated. I think I'm right about that. Yeah, I think.
But Jim Carrey didn't, and it's just it's always just killed me. I don't even remember who won that year. That was '98. But man. God,
how many nominations did Carrey get? Because he had some. Did he ever get a nomination? Did he get a nomination for Man on the Moon?
No.
I don't think he's ever had
a nomination.
I don't think so.
That's ridiculous.
He didn't get it for Eternal Sunshine. He didn't get it for Man on the Moon. He didn't get it for this. Yeah.
Just incredible work.
He didn't get it for Dumb and Dumber. He didn't get it for Ace Ventura. Didn't get it for
it's almost like
I was following you there, not even really I was like, wait a second.
I think the first movie he could have reasonably had awards talk about was Cable Guy. I think he does some really interesting things in Cable Guy.
Are you doing a bit?
Kidding.
Are you doing?
No, I don't. No, I don't think you're kidding. I don't like. I need to rewatch Cable Guy. I have never seen it since the theater. I just did not like it, but
no.
Everybody I know loves that movie, so I need to watch it again. And
I just think he's doing some interesting stuff there, but once he gets to this stage of his career, it became very obvious that awards were not going to be a thing for him. That people are like, you already got your awards. Your awards are in the $20 million paychecks you get for making.
He was hurt. I think he was hurt about this, though. I think
genuinely.
I remember, okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. I think it really impacted, and that back to back with the Man on the Moon thing, where he just lost himself in that character. There's a great documentary, by the way, if you haven't seen it, called Jim and Andy, that goes over this stuff. But the back to back combination of not getting any awards nominations, even though it was a validation that he really did want, and losing himself in that character, I think really, really, he's had a lot of recovery to do on that stuff.
And that's a movie where I'm not a huge, the movie itself is fine, but he's excellent in it. I mean, he becomes Andy Kaufman in a way that I don't think anyone else could. So
yeah. What do you got at number 2, Jonathan?
So this is my Rocky movie. I will say real quick why I didn't pick Rocky, because I think Rocky is the best film in the franchise. I think the only one that even comes close is maybe Creed, like the first Creed movie. But I think Rocky is the best movie in the franchise. My thing with Rocky, when I was thinking through my just kind of my own personal criteria, Apollo isn't really like Rocky's just trying to do something. Like he's trying to become a boxer and all that kind of stuff. I feel like Apollo just happens to be that person. But Rocky 3 is the one I went with.
Mr. T.
And yeah, I almost went with Rocky 4, but the reason I went with Rocky 3, reason I went with Rocky 3 though is because I think Clubber Lang is a better villain than Drago. I think Clubber Lang is such a great villain, and Clubber Lang is really the one that's wanting to duel with Rocky. Rocky doesn't really want to have anything to do with him, so I think that's an interesting dynamic. Because I mean, that one of those early scenes is Clubber Lang pulling up and just shouting at Rocky like, "Why won't you fight me? You need to fight me," and all that kind of stuff. And then of course you deal with Mickey's death, which really gets Rocky on the path and all that kind of stuff. Which I know Rocky 4 just kind of repeats that. My personal favorite in the franchise is Rocky 4. This and the first one are like
that's revenge, like out of Rocky movies.
Yeah, but I don't know. This one for some reason hit me harder with what we were talking about, and I think a lot of it has to do just with Mr. T and the Clubber Lang character. I just think he's such a, I just think he's a really, really just kind of scary villain, because he's just so like animalistic and just like so. I don't know. He's just so like it's all just I'm trying
primal.
to think of the word. Yeah, he's just very primal. It's just it's very much just driven. Like he just wants to pound the crap out of Rocky. Drago's a little more like, I just don't think in Rocky 4 it doesn't really matter that it's Rocky. Like they just want Drago to come over and they want him to beat the best, and the best happens to be Rocky.
Right.
Whereas I think Clubber Lang really wants Rocky. Like he thinks Rocky's fake. He thinks he's, he doesn't think he's nearly as good. And we find out in the first fight he's not.
Yeah.
And then you have he's got to rebuild himself, and the training with Apollo is so good, and that relationship gets cemented and makes it so much sadder in the fourth one when Apollo dies. So yeah, this just felt like the one I should put in there.
Nice.
Also, Rocky
I don't think you can go wrong with any of them.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. I think the interesting thing about Rocky 3 is it brings up a really interesting racial element to the movie too.
Yes.
Like especially between Paulie and like Apollo Creed, like you can't train him like a black fighter and stuff like that. And you're like, okay, so we're gonna get into this element, and it's interesting, the way you see the different training aspects between the way Creed trains and then the way that Mickey trained, and the physical transformation you have from like Rocky 2 to Rocky 3, like he's definitely more cut and lean. And I'm just a super fan of the Rocky franchise. So
me too. It's one of my favorites. And this is also the one where Stallone really takes control of it. Like, I mean, he wrote the first one, and I assume he wrote the second one, but different directors, or maybe he did direct the second one. I don't know. This just feels like, I mean, this is 1983, and then
for this one,
and then just 2 years later, you get Rocky 4 and Rambo: First Blood Part 2 released in the same year. So I mean, this is Stallone getting to that peak. And I think that's part of it too, is just Stallone becoming a movie star and stuff like that. 82, nice. That's right. Yeah.
Nice.
Is this the one that has Hulk Hogan as Thunder Lips in it too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, we're on to our number ones. Still no repeats. Will be interesting to see if any of us have the same number one. Andrew, you're going first.
I'm going to go with a little Scorsese film starring Leonardo DiCaprio, of course, and Daniel Day-Lewis. I'm going to go with Gangs of New York.
Ah, nice. Yeah.
Bill the Butcher, one of the best villains ever. Whenever you're talking about Daniel Day-Lewis, you know you're going to be talking about one of the greatest performances of all time. That's what he does. He doesn't do anything less than perfection. I love how immersive that this turn of the century New York is, and how well brought to life it is. This is definitely a final Showdown movie, but it's also like an amazing revenge story. This actually feels a lot more Shakespearean than a lot of movies that I can think of that are actually Shakespeare. Like this has like pure Hamlet written all over it. Cameron Diaz is amazing. Leo's amazing. Yeah, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's like in my top 20.
Nice.
Long, very long movie. So don't start watching it unless you have the time to finish it. And if you want to see what the real Greatest Showman, what's his name? Freaking Who is Hugh Jackman? No, not Hugh Jackman. The actual character of
Barnum.
Yeah, P.T. Barnum. You want to see the real P.T. Barnum? Watch Gangs of New York.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah,
there you go. Doesn't break out into song in that one though.
No, this was interestingly enough. I don't know if you remember this, Andrew, but when I did, when you guys did the what do you call that with the I name like 3 movies and you have to pick the one that I didn't see. Or
your
List of Shame game.
List of Shame.
List of Shame. Yeah, and Gangs of New York was one of mine that I hadn't seen. I've seen it since, and yeah, I loved it. It's great.
Yeah,
nice.
Absolutely, I love it. Aaron, what you got?
My number 1 is The Prestige.
Good call.
Is what I have at number 1. And yeah, this is one we've talked about many, many times. It is my favorite Nolan movie.
Yeah.
I just think it's the thing that I always go back to is of all his movies, he plays with different elements of magic, whether it be time or whatever. In this one, it is the most explicit on the screen, and yet is also somehow the most metaphorical. There's this beautiful thing about filmmaking in his movies and how it is magic, and he just lays it all out here on the page and somehow interweaves it into this incredibly compelling, fascinating, surprising story. So,
can I tell you why I didn't put this movie on my list?
Sure.
Because if I'm remembering when I read the email talking about this, it was talking about a final showdown between characters.
Right.
But I think that in this movie, it's very, it's the inciting incident is at the very beginning, and then the rest of the movie is just a competition showdown.
It's a fair point. Yeah, that's a fair point. I
don't begrudge you at all for I'm never going to be mad for anybody mentioning The Prestige.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I know I'm not as high on Nolan as a lot of people with some of his films, but I'm with you on this one. This one's amazing. I think my problems with Nolan in some of his films where I think structurally he has some issues sometimes and stuff like that, but I think he nails it here. I think everything about this movie is pretty perfect. This or Interstellar is my favorite film of his. I go back and forth, but
nice.
It's amazing.
All right, what do you got at number 1, Jonathan?
Man, this was when I first read the email of what we were doing. This was the first movie that came to my mind. I think this is like the ultimate showdown movie, and it is High Noon. I love this movie. I have a lot of nostalgia for it. It was a movie that my dad and I watched a lot together, which I don't think I'll be the only son who has that story. But Gary Cooper plays Grace Kelly's so good in this. Gary Cooper plays a sheriff of a town, and he a prisoner that he put away, played by Ian McDonald, gets out of prison, and he's on his way to fight to have a shootout with Gary Cooper at high noon. And it's just it's such an incredible movie. It's the final showdown and everything is outstanding and everything, but it's just, there's so much more going on in the movie. And it's also one of those kind of pivotal turning points with the Western. Like this is, I think the Western really changed in 69 with the Wild Bunch, but this is still this is so different than like the Westerns of the 40s. Like this is a very much a change, and you kind of start seeing the evolution of what the Western is going to become. And I just love it, especially with this, for this topic alone. I couldn't think of a better movie to put at number 1. So if for some reason you haven't seen it, or you're just people don't like to watch black and white, that's fine. This is one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen in my life, and if it was in color, it wouldn't be. I think the black and white cinematography in this movie is just so good.
Nice.
I love this movie. Fred Zinnemann, I think, directed it. I think that's right.
Yes, he did. Because I was looking up what other. He did High Noon, obviously, and then he did from From Here to Eternity. That was the other movie I was trying to think of that he did. Yeah, I mean, you know me, I love Westerns. High Noon.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's brilliant movie. I love the way this character of Gary Cooper just evolves, like the whole, no, I'm gonna stay, I'm gonna wait, and it's a great movie that builds like tension, like the more it draws down to the end of this movie, you're just like, oh my gosh, it's finally here. And
he's so like, he's got like he's nervous, like he's not like, he's not John Wayne, like he's like, he's not looking forward to it. Like he's got some issues, and I can't say that I'm a huge Gary Cooper fan, but I just love him in this movie. Like, this is like the perfect role for him. And not that I dislike him, I just don't know that he's not a classic actor that I think of when I'm like, who are your favorite actors from that time period? But it's amazing.
This is on my list of shame. Even as I've been catching up, I just missed this one somehow, so I will have to get it in the
I don't know how accessible it is. I didn't look that up. Yeah, but I mean, I know it's like, I think it's available. Like, you can get like a Blu-ray and stuff like that. I think it's available, but or maybe I'm wrong about that. But there's got to be some kind of physical copy out there of it. Sure. But I don't know if it's streaming. I have no idea. Yeah.
I'll have to get it on my list. I have not checked this one out.
You can watch it on Prime.
Oh, nice. There you go. And because it's weirdly also, and I don't know, maybe just Turner Classic has different deals with different studios, but I don't feel like it's one they ever show either. So it's not on TV if you still have cable,
Does
I don't know.
Does TCM have an app or anything?
They do, but you have to have access to either you have to have cable or you have to have access to somebody who has
a provider. Yeah. That kind
of they do stuff on HBO Max. There's a TCM section on HBO Max.
Oh, really?
But I don't know how many movies are on there and what. So I actually just got rid of cable. So I joined the club.
Nicely done. Way to be in the cord cutting club.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Best ever Showdown movies. We'll do some honorable mentions here really quickly because we spent a lot of time killing Michael Myers, which the movie didn't, but we did. Yeah. And so we'll run through these pretty quickly. Catch Me If You Can, I think, deserves mentioning. The Dark Knight could be considered a Showdown movie in many ways. Hell or High Water was another one I thought of for possible inclusion. The Fugitive, another great movie that's kind of a Showdown movie. Phantom Thread, interestingly enough, I think fits this category. Love that movie.
I still need to see it. It's on my list.
And 3:10 to Yuma is
oh god, yeah.
Really,
I mean, that would be like maybe after High Noon, like kind of the Western.
Yeah.
The original or the remake, whichever one.
I was talking about the remake, but
no, I know, but I'm just saying either way, that story.
Yeah,
I guess the Showdown wouldn't be with Russell Crowe; it'd be with Charlie, which is Ben Foster's character, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, I'll buy it. I mean, I love 3:10 to Yuma, so please talk more about it.
Yeah. Did you guys have any others you wanted to mention?
I figured that this was going to be such a broad like range of movies that we would go ahead and mention a whole bunch anyway, so I didn't really bother with the list.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised Empire Strikes Back didn't get on either one of yours.
Yeah, I didn't quite feel like it fit the category, but it does.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I think I have it as an honorable mention, but and maybe it wouldn't have made the top 5 anyways if I hadn't, but yeah, that was kind of my thinking. There was a couple like that. Like, I was trying to think of a Bond movie because I'm such a huge fan of that franchise, but really the only one that really, really works specifically for this is Man with the Golden Gun, and that is terrible. So there was no way I was putting that on there.
Although I love Christopher Lee. Pretty good Showdown movie. Skyfall.
Yeah, from Russia with Love, I actually saw that on some lists. Like, I kind of looked up like what other people thought, like what were Showdown movies for a lot of people, and I would see From Russia with Love on there. I don't know that I kind of buy it because I don't know that it matters that it's Bond, but I tried it. Actually, oddly enough, we mentioned Halloween Kills, which didn't end up being one, but I was thinking about slasher films. I was mostly thinking about like Nightmare on Elm Street and Halloween, but once again, like, if you take those movies for what they are at that time, I mean, there's really no intent. Like it doesn't matter that it's Nancy, that Freddy's just trying to kill everybody. So, but I do find Nightmare on Elm Street interesting in the fact that, like, I love Nancy as a final girl because once she realizes what's going on, she goes in full, like, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to go do some research and I'm going to figure out how to stop them and all that kind of stuff. So it's really It's really interesting. One I saw on a lot of lists that I have never seen, unfortunately. And I don't know if you've seen this, Andrew, because you're such a Western fan, but Once Upon a Time in the West, I saw that mentioned a ton. So I thought it was worth mentioning.
It's my second favorite Western ever.
Nice. Would you consider that like a Showdown movie?
Yeah, 100%. Okay. And if I would have thought of it, it would have been on here. It would have been.
They're a lot like that.
Yeah. And then 3 O'Clock High, which is actually basically a remake of High Noon, but it's set in a high school in the 80s, is a pretty interesting movie. It's about like basically like a guy ticks off a bully, and the bully's like, we're gonna fight at 3 o'clock, and it's just all building up to that. And it's kind of fun. It's under the radar. I think they did just do a Blu-ray release, so I think it's getting a little more attention. And then I was also trying to think if like Jaws or like something like that was. I finally decided decided it wasn't, just because it's an animal, right? I mean, the animal does not have revenge. Although the Jaws sequels now might count because they decided to create this weird framework.
I could see including something like what was the Blake Lively one that I liked that not a lot of people did.
Deep.
What was that called? Oh, I can't think of what that was called either. Now.
But the one I'm talking about, that is kind of a Showdown movie because that shark has intent. Like that is definitely,
No, that one would
and that
be
is a duel between them.
Oh, The Shallows.
The Shallows. Yeah. That's what
that would be more so than Jaws, I think, because I even thought about like Predator and like Aliens, but I just, in the grand scheme of things, like I said, I was trying to think of where it mattered to both people.
Right.
That they were facing each
other. Exactly.
So.
Yeah, totally. Well, there you go. Best ever Showdown movies. Let's move into our buried treasure. Jonathan, you are the guest, so you get to finish us off. I will start us off. And I'll just mention this quickly, but second season of The Morning Show is out on Apple TV Plus. I don't know if you checked out the first season.
My wife is literally watching this right now. It's hilarious.
I am really digging this second season. I enjoyed the first season for what it was. And there's just something about really charismatic, dominating performances on screen that the material, obviously is always going to matter. It's not like I don't think there's good material here, but the performances are the drive here. It is so fun to watch Aniston and Witherspoon go at each other. It is so fun. I'm having a really good time with this show and very interested in this second season as it progresses. It has made the absolute choice that I usually haven't liked during this time, where it is going to make the pandemic a part of the storyline, but it's doing it in a way that I haven't seen yet, where it's really staying tightly focused on pre-pandemic, like kind of in that January, February, March of 2020 range, where it was like, kind of, you heard of it. So they're at a morning show, right? So, it's really interesting to hear them casually mention, there's this coronavirus thing happening in China. And, and then they'll just move on to, a story that's more important to them or whatever. Like it's handling it in a very interesting way. And I'm curious to see as it progresses, kind of how it does that. But more than anything, man, I love these characters and watching these people in this show. So I thought I'd mention The Morning Show. I'm enjoying it.
Cool.
Andrew, what about you?
Well, Aaron, as you know, I am going through the years of my list of shame, and we are going to go all the way back to the year 1990 when the Hubble telescope was launched into space. Germany became a full nation again. Paula Abdul danced with a cartoon cat in opposites attract, and I turned 4. And the little ditty of a film was released called Edward Scissorhands.
Nice.
Wow, nice.
Do not let it be said that I'm not willing to, watch directors that I'm not a fan of, just to knock stuff off my list, because as everybody knows, I'm not a big Tim Burton fan. So what did I think of this movie? It's fine. It's okay.
Aw.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the message of this movie is beautiful and important. The championing of the thing that makes you different can be your most, amazing asset. Being normal, it isn't always as it's cracked up to be. Using that thing that makes you special to, make the world a more beautiful place is great. I love all of that. it's just I'm not a fan of Tim Burton's style. You know, it's fine. I think that Johnny Depp is doing great work here. You know, unquestionably he's doing great work, but other than Big Fish, I can't really think of a Tim Burton. Oh, and Batman, the first Batman movie, because I think that his style just was very comical anyway. You know, so I think that Batman just kind of works. But yeah, Big Fish is the only one of his movies that I love. So I know this and Frankenweenie was like one of his first movies that he ever did. So I was expecting to see, is he going to be a more tame version of Tim Burton? You know, one who's not as like, oh, I can do whatever I want now because I'm Tim Burton and I'm crazy. You know, it's fine. I'll just say it's fine. I can appreciate it for what it is. Is it one that I'll ever watch again? No.
It's interesting though because I'm sorry. Did I interrupt you?
I'm done.
Oh, it's interesting though because this was his follow up to Batman. So this was his fourth feature film. So he had done
Frankenweenie and Pee-wee's.
He did Pee-wee's Big Adventure. He did Beetlejuice, and then he did Batman, and then he did this before, and then he did Batman Returns after this. But I didn't like this as a kid. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I loved Pee-wee, Beetlejuice, and Batman so much, and this was just very different. So I know this is a nostalgia thing because I love this movie now. I came to this as an adult. I rewatched it and just fell in love with it. I love his Suburbia. Like, I think his Suburbia, I mean, it's very fantastical and goofy, but like, you know, as someone who's lived in the suburbs for the majority of his life, lives in the suburbs now, it's not like it's broad and it's like overly comical the way that he does the characters and stuff, but there's a lot of truth in there. Like it's kind of scary, like actually like how close to reality like that suburban aesthetic is. And so I don't know. I love Depp's great. I think this might be this is one of Winona Ryder. I think her best performances. Anthony Michael Hall, who was so terrible in Halloween Kills, is actually
an amazing villain.
Here. Yeah, he's a great villain. He's a great villain. I don't know. There's just something I could do without like the people wanting to like have sex with him. Like that's weird, I think. But
what's her name?
It's the lady from Kathy Baker, maybe.
Kathy Baker, that's who it is. Yeah.
From Picket Fences and stuff. She's really funny, but I love this movie. But I know what you're saying. If you're not a Tim Burton fan, I mean, this is very like this and Batman Returns back to back are the most Tim Burton-y movies that have ever Tim Burtoned, I think.
It's fine. Yeah. So that's my all right, John.
Yeah, what do you got, Jonathan?
So let's talk about a horror franchise that's actually doing like interesting things. I wanted to talk about the new TV series on Sci-Fi and USA, and that is Chucky. I got to tell you, I'm probably more of a fan of the Child's Play franchise, especially as I get older and go back and watch some of these. I've become even a bigger fan for a lot of reasons. I think one of the interesting things about this franchise, though, is that Don Mancini, with the exception of the remake, Don Mancini has been involved in every film. He's written them all. He's directed the last few, and he is the one heading up this TV series. I don't know. I've only seen the first episode, and I'm not saying it blew me away. But it's really interesting because you're like, how are they going to make a TV show, out of a killer doll, franchise? And I don't know where it's going to go. And I know we're going to get into, I know this is going to tie into the franchise some because there are actors from like Jennifer Tilly's going to be on this show. Alex Vincent's going to be on the show. And they're going to have a lot of actors from the film. I think Fiona Dourif, Brad Dourif's daughter, is on the show. But I think Don Mancini being involved is what makes this, because that just doesn't happen, right? These writers don't stay with the franchises, especially franchises that are now, there's been 7, 8, if there's, I think 7 Child's Play films, not including that remake from a few years ago. And now this TV show. The setting I think is really interesting because it's a middle school setting. These are like 7th graders or 8th graders or something. And it's dealing with bullying, seems to be a pretty big focus on this show, which I think is really interesting. Don Mancini, I don't know all about his past. I do know though that he's a gay man who has talked plenty about getting breaks in the industry and stuff, and how he has been ostracized and things like that, like in the past. And he definitely plays that up in a lot of these movies. Like you typically have characters that are facing. It doesn't necessarily have to be that they're homosexual or anything, but although that is definitely a subject matter focused on in this show. But it's just they're ostracized for whatever reason. They're something, they have a disability, or he definitely lays into that, and I think it's really interesting. And he's doing that in this show, which I find fascinating. I really like this lead character, and I don't know. I'm just fascinated this became a show. I'm curious where it's going to go, and I liked the first episode, so I thought I would mention it. I don't know. I don't think it's really streaming because it's Sci-Fi is NBC, but it's not on Peacock because I checked. I found it on Sci-Fi has their own streaming thing where you have to watch commercials and stuff, and you can watch it like the day after it airs. But yeah, no, it's good stuff.
You said it was also on USA?
It's also on USA. Yep.
There you go.
Was he always the original voice of Chucky, or was
he still is. He's still doing it, and that's the
Mark
other
Hamill
great
was
thing.
the only time somebody else did it. Then
correct. Yeah, and
I
Brad
never saw
Dourif
that one.
Yeah, it was okay, but it was just Universal, like, hey, we're gonna make another Child's Play movie, and we're not gonna let anybody else be involved. It was weird. Brad Dourif is the other reason I think this franchise is done as well as it has for me, because he's such a great voice. He's got such a distinctive voice, and he gives so much character to this really silly character of Chucky. I mean, this should not work. Like, this should absolutely not work at all. But it does in weird ways. Like, the first Child's Play is genuinely like suspenseful. Like Tom Holland directed
it ruined my childhood.
Just like it was intended.
Just as intended.
So if any of that sounds interesting, definitely check out Chucky.
Well, there you go. That is Chucky on Sci-Fi Network or USA. Edward Scissorhands is
Hulu.
Is streaming on Hulu, and The Morning Show on Apple TV Plus. Well, we did it, guys. We accomplished a podcast. This is a new thing called podcasting. We managed to do one. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Podcast.
Sif Pop is part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. You can find out more about other shows on the network at studiodna.media or by searching Studio DNA in your podcast player. Huge thanks to Andrew for hanging out today.
Thank you, buddy.
Big thanks to Phil for producing the audio and video show.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks to Drew for doing some visuals for the live stream.
Yeah, buddy.
And thank you to Jonathan Watkins for hanging out with us and bringing all the Halloween knowledge. Anything you want to promote? Anywhere you want to send people, Jonathan? I mean, I'm on Twitter. I might lose my handle after people hear my review of Halloween Kills, but right now it's at Sam Loomis 13. I'm on Letterboxd. You could just look me up. I actually did I don't know if it's really promoting, but just for fun, I made a list of my 100 favorite horror movies and put that on Letterboxd. So and shared that on Twitter and stuff. So if you want to check that out, it's on there. And I also, obviously, I'm a writer along with Aaron and stuff for Cinema Sins, TV Sins, all the fun Sin stuff. And we do a podcast together every week called Behind the Sins, which is a lot of fun. So check it out. There you go. Also, thank you to our SIFPOP members for making SIFPOP a real thing. You can find out more info on all the perks and the fun at patreon.com/SiftPop. Lots of ways to connect with the podcast. You can leave a comment, a rating, or a review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. And if you'd like to email us, that is feedback@siftpop.com. Feedback@siftpop.com. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like the show too. So make sure you let them know about it and that listening is much easier than, well, killing Michael Myers, apparently. We'll be back next week. We will have Dune and probably The French Dispatch. So a couple big hitters next week, and we will see you then. Yeah. Thank you to those who are hanging out with us on the video stream. We did go a little long, so I'm in a bit of a rush, so we're going to say goodbye pretty quickly. But did want to say thank you. I saw Frank was hanging out with us. Jay Bourgeois. Vincent, stop by if you're still around. Vincent, obla to you as well, and hope you are doing well. Mark was hanging out with us, so thank you guys. Appreciate you hanging out with us on a Saturday morning, and we will catch you